Before I start this video, which is really just audio with the screenshot of my new Twitter account that you should follow if you're into Twitter, I just want to remind people really quickly to keep in mind that YouTube, Twitter, Facebook not so much, but YouTube and Twitter have a very close relationship with each other. They work together very closely. So if Twitter doesn't like a YouTube channel that the CEO of YouTube doesn't like, it would not be very hard for them to talk about how much they don't like that channel together. It's not rocket science. When people call things like this conspiracy theories, well, that is just the painfully naive dismissiveness from somebody who doesn't understand politics that they use to dismiss people who do understand politics when they talk about politics. That's all that it is. So, I am one of those centrists that they shadow banned on Twitter. Yes, me. Even though I don't define as a centrist, it's kind of hard to box me in. But they certainly don't like my ideas spreading. The heads of the social media companies, oh, they don't like me one bit. No, they don't. Hey, everybody, it's Prince of Queens. And does anybody actually have all that much of a problem with regulating social media companies to ensure that they don't form political and informational monopolies? Like, I know that you guys sort of say that you do. Like, you say, oh, keep the government out of it. The government shouldn't do it. Okay, the government is in it. The government is beyond in it. The government is all up inside Twitter, Facebook, Google. It is breeding them. It is breeding them raw. And it's not even the government that's in power anymore, technically. It's like the Democratic Party has convinced social media companies to be rogue. And that's weird because that means that the social media companies that everybody uses is oppressing the people's wishes. Because the Democrats are not in power. They are not the majority in the federal government or in the individual states. So the government that is in power might want to reassert itself. And I just don't see any really great argument. I mean, I know that there has to be some sort of great libertarian argument about why it could go wrong at some point, that we're regulating and making sure that they are non-completely biased and that they don't get to shadow ban people and that they don't get to unsubscribe people from my channel 10 times a piece. I bet that there's an argument that making sure that they're not biased somehow is bad someday, but I can't think of it. I can't think of it. I'm not that much of a libertarian, man. I'm just not. Like, okay, I'm somebody that actually does think that the government has a purpose. You caught me. You caught me. You know who's actually reminding me of why I think in such ways really well? I had the fortunate opportunity to stream with him on, I believe, yesterday, is V. V is that Romanian guy. He talks kind of nasal and he has a very thick accent, who is pretty good friends with Sargon, streams a lot with Sargon. People accuse him of being a Sargon dick sucker to the point where it's become a joke. But V's really smart, and I've watched him in the past and listened to him in the past. So after I streamed with him, I, checked out some of his videos over the past couple of months that I hadn't seen. And he has a really good understanding of the purpose of government, because he lives in Romania, where that was, you know, either it was a part of the Soviet Union or within very, very close proximity to the Soviet Union. And when all of that stuff collapsed, they had to kind of reform their more or less capitalistic governments. And they have experience building these things back from the ground up. So if you listen to some of his videos, he explains why you need to protect against monopolies and stuff. So I don't want to rehash that all that much. I just want to say that I have not seen any good examples about what could possibly go wrong if the government decided to not let the social media companies be completely biased towards one political party. Like, I guess the fear is that somehow the other political party would make the bias in their favor. I guess, sure, but we could try to do it in a nonpartisan way, right? Right? Okay, whatever. At this point, I just want to talk about myself, because that's probably why you tuned into this video. I've been shadow banned. I am one of the people that's been shadow banned on Twitter, and I've been shadow banned for a while. Over 6 months, probably more like 7 or 8 months. It was hard to tell, because the thing that happened was that last year I stopped drinking, and I also had like 2 hate speech strikes on my channel, which were completely arbitrary. I've gotten 4 now. They're all very absurd. And I stopped drinking for 6 months straight, couldn't stream on my channel, and also got a bit of a depression, because that's what happens if you actually drink a whole lot, which I was for a while, and then you just stop entirely. You're going to get depressed for a number of months, and so I couldn't stream at all. And so all I could do was play video games and make videos and upload them. And so I didn't really interact on Twitter. I wasn't tweeting or anything. I wasn't trying to go on live streams or interact with people. And so my videos would automatically upload, but they got less and less views. And I don't know how long the shadow ban was in place. It could have been in place for close to a year now, but I don't entirely know. But it definitely became apparent early this year that the engagement that I had was just nothing like what it used to be. And I did a test where, you know, I had about 1,700 followers on Twitter, which is, you know, modest, but I just tweeted, if you can see this, like it, but don't retweet it. I want to test to see how many people can see it. And I got about 71. So 71 out of 1,700 followers. Okay, let's assume, let's have a high estimate that that 500 of my followers had all muted me. 500 of them. That's still about, what, 1,130 people unaccounted for that somehow didn't see it? I don't know. It sort of strikes me as fishy. And that was when I was starting to really suspect strongly that I was shadow banned, because my videos are uploaded every day to my Twitter. And it used to be a great source of traffic for me, because people would see them and retweet them and like them a whole bunch. Like, that happened very frequently. And a lot of my regular audience members were people that had, you know, thousands of Twitter followers. And I got a lot of views that way. It was awesome. But now that hasn't happened in a really long time. And, you know, when you start suspecting stuff like that, there's always going to be some people that tell you that it's true, probably, you know, like your loyal subscribers and your loyal, you know, I guess fans, they'll say that. But there's also going to be people who get really, really, really invested in gaslighting you and telling you that you're imagining things. And I don't know why. I don't know. And I don't know who these people are. I don't know if they are the infamous professional, you know, leftist Venezuelan hackers or whatever that just go around on the internet gaslighting everybody with something to say that people want to hear or whatever. But these people will sit there and get in a committed argument with you, trying to explain to you how you can't possibly be shadow banned on Twitter. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I am. But when somebody does that to you, it can have a tendency to make you doubt yourself a little bit. Because then you have to think, well, okay, well, what's the other possibility? Maybe my videos haven't been that good recently. Actually, I have been kind of depressed. My videos haven't been that good. Maybe nobody's liking it when I upload a video automatically on Twitter, just because my videos aren't that good. Oh God. Well, no, that's not right. I have been shadow banned. Over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, I talked to numerous people that said that, yeah, they don't see my tweets. And, my friends, people that I interact with fairly regularly, they do tend to see them, but that's how it works. But basically everybody else doesn't see them. So I talked to people like Benjamin Boyce, who is a friend of mine, definitely, and we've talked numerous different times at length, and I really like him, and I watch a lot of his videos, and he said he's watched a lot of my videos, but we don't reach out to each other and contact each other regularly. It's very rare, like I'll send him a message once every 2 or 3 months, probably, for some reason. We hung out in Seattle because he was in Seattle a few months ago, and we hung out and had lunch, dinner together, and he said, yeah, I don't ever see your tweets. Huh, that's weird. And I was like, oh, I knew it, yeah. This guy Disturbing Trends, who has a channel, he said the same thing, and he's like, yeah, now that you mention it, I never see your tweets. A guy named The Liberal Hammer, who was a legit friend of mine, who I used to talk to all the time, but then he kind of dropped out of the YouTube sphere for a long time. He says that he hasn't seen my tweets in a long time. Well, they're still being published literally automatically every time I upload a video, which is a lot. So yes, I'm one of the people that's been shadow banned. So what I want you guys to think about is that anybody that tells you that they are, they probably are, because I'm not a particularly big YouTuber. Now, granted, I can think of motivations that I would be targeted in particular, because I know that I'm being targeted on YouTube in terms of the fact that I was growing very, very, very rapidly. I had a average monthly of over 70 subscribers a day for a month or two, and then it just halted. It went down to about 20, and then down to 5, and then just stopped growing. And it was very, very sudden, and very obvious that something happened. And of course, that was around the same time that people were starting to write me and tell me that they were being literally unsubscribed from my channel, which, if you pay attention to the YouTube sphere, that happens to a lot of people. Well, it was happening a lot to me. And people were also saying that they weren't seeing my videos in the algorithms and weren't getting notifications when I uploaded a video. Well, that stuff just started happening more and more and more. And then you can just think about the fact that every time you try to do a search for anything on YouTube related to any news story, all you see now is a bunch of CNN type stuff, CNN, CBS. That's the only thing. Maybe BBC is going to come up. You can't just find alternative news on YouTube in the way that you used to. That is what is wrong with YouTube at the moment. And that's what it's made it difficult for channels like my own to grow. And, I'm on the bad apple list, and most YouTubers are. Most YouTubers are on the troublemaker list. Apparently, the only people that aren't are ContraPoints and, I don't know, the Jonathan McIntosh, whatever that guy is. And then I was getting hate speech strikes over and over. and they were absurd, these hate speech strikes for me talking about how I don't like it when somebody dresses completely feminine and then starts arguments over being allegedly non-binary. And I don't think that those people are cool. And I make a long argument about it, and it's not mean, really. And then that video gets flagged as hate speech, and the people that could potentially help me get it removed can't. And that's all that I said was, this very long, very extrapolated argument about certain people who pretend to be non-binary and how I thought that those certain people were annoying. Well, that video gets flagged. Meanwhile, all sorts of people are constantly saying there's only two genders and they don't get in trouble. Well, okay, obviously there's a double standard and it is negatively affecting me, even within the conservative sphere. Like, I'm being penalized somehow even more than Lauren Southern or Blair White. Now, I can actually come up with the reason that that would be. And the reason is that I cannot, for the life of me, identify a single other gay male or lesbian voice in all of YouTube that speaks to the distinct issues within the gay and lesbian community that are the problems that intersectionality pose within the gay and lesbian community. I created a niche for talking about that stuff, and my videos and subscribership were growing very, very rapidly, organically, and then all of a sudden it stopped. But I've even continued to grow in sentiment. Other channels are sprouting up that I've, compiled my Gig.AI playlist for guys that think similarly to myself in terms of my feelings about the gay male community. If the intersectionals, and the intersectionals are in charge of the social media companies, if they identified the fact that my ideas were very appealing to gay men, well, they would want to nip it in the bud, obviously. It's, people can sit around being like, you're not that important, you don't have that many subscribers, God, get over yourself. Don't you think that might be kind of the point? So, yeah, I just want to vent about it a little bit. I do want to just kind of say, like, look, this has been happening to me, and it's annoying. So, I should be moving on. The next thing I was going to say is that it seems like all of these companies are kind of collapsing. And I've been predicting that for a long time. Facebook is not going to maintain being profitable. It could be put out of business, but it's going to take a while. But the funny thing about these companies, and Twitter has never been profitable, so now that it's losing its stock price, it's just going to go out of business, and Gab.AI could take over pretty easily, actually. It's just the software in between these programs. It's nothing really that hard. Whereas the difference between Facebook and Gab is actually, Facebook and Minds, that's actually kind of a difficult thing to do. But I've known countless people who work for these types of companies, things like Facebook and Twitter, the companies that I believe are going to go out of business. And what's really interesting about them on a personal level, and this is my anecdotal experience, but remember, I lived in San Francisco for 7 years, so I knew people that worked at Twitter and Facebook, and those people have insulated themselves from hearing from people who might expose them to wrongthink. And I know that because these people would be on my Facebook friend list, and the second you would say anything that wasn't intersectional or would go against the Democratic Party line, say something bad about Hillary Clinton, they would unfriend you. And they did that really, really, really rigidly. And they were doing that because I guess their bosses told them that they had to go to do that. You know, they had to get rid of everybody that thought differently. So what happens once they can no longer insulate themselves from wrongthink, and then their company goes bankrupt and they realized that they are dramatically behind the times culturally? Like, what's going to happen to all these workers that were told that the only way to keep their job was to keep having these political beliefs, and that way Facebook will be pure? And then Facebook goes out of business and they don't know how to deal with the real world. It's just a weird, messed up situation. I mean, it's like, that's it's kind of would be like as if what would happen if a communist government collapsed, or maybe I'm imagining something like The Walking Dead. Let's say, oh yeah, it's kind of like Alexandria. You know, the collapse of Alexandria. The people, they don't know how to survive. So if it collapses, it's done, you know? I don't know. I did that a little bit, that mentality of shutting everything out, even though it was more relevant, when it was hipster music back early to mid last decade, because I came from the electronic music scene. So here's the thing. In the early 1990s in Seattle, everybody listened to alternative rock until alternative rock got completely boring, and then everybody listened to electronic music, rave music, and that became really cool. Well, I moved to New York City when by 2001, 2002, a lot of good rock bands were coming out, and that was starting to eclipse the electronic music. But I was really stubborn, and I hung on to the belief that electronic music was just better. And all these people who I actually thought were cool and interesting and I liked would kind of cringe when I would tell them that I listened to electronic music. They'd be like, oh. And I'd ask them what they listened to, and they would tell me, and I'd be like, oh, that's like hipster bands. That's okay, whatever. and then I wouldn't actually listen to the bands that they would mention. So I didn't hear these bands like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs for numerous years, just because I was really, really stubborn, and I thought that electronic music was better, and I wouldn't be friends with hipsters. Until finally I realized that electronic music really was boring. Like, they were telling the truth. I was just really committed to it because I was a DJ, and then I should explore other types of music. And oh boy, it turned out that all this hipster music actually made me happier, and I was behind the times because I was insulated. I was insulated in my own personal understanding of the world that I had created for myself. Well, what's weird about social media, and I'm just going to close this video on that note, is that everybody knows that social media has the tendency to develop echo chambers. Everybody's known about that for a long, long time. But it creates politicians collaborating together with social media companies can very, very deliberately craft echo chambers for entire demographics of people. They can look into somebody's financial class and their general political affiliation and their ethnicity and that kind of a thing, and they can market things to people to get them to all think the same and to be afraid of outsiders and all of that kind of stuff. And the Democrats and the European Union and the social media companies really, really exploited that in a way that we've never seen in human history. And they don't know how to control it entirely either. The only thing that we can really, really do, I guess, at the moment is tell them to stop. Like, make it so that they have to stop. I don't want to do anything more than that, but can we just get them to stop? Go from there?